Hello, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a really close look at the anatomy of American English. Now, this is a language variety spoken by hundreds of millions of people, yet its exact mechanics, its history, and the ways it's still changing right now are often totally misunderstood. So let's dive right into the fascinating evolution of American English and see exactly how this incredibly dynamic language was built, quite literally from the ground up. Right off the bat, I want you to try saying these two words out loud for me. Ready? Do you pronounce metal, like iron or steel, and metal, like a shiny gold medal, the exact same way? Well, if you answered yes, you are actually already demonstrating a key mechanical quirk of the American accent. Linguists call it T&D flapping. And today, we're going to explore exactly why you do that and where that particular linguistic habit actually comes from. Here is our roadmap for dissecting the anatomy of American English. We'll kick things off with origins and DNA. Then we'll check out the sounds, examine vocabulary and grammar, explore some regional flavors, and finally wrap up with its modern status. All right, jumping into Section 1, Origins and DNA. So back in the 17th century, early English-speaking settlers arrived in North America, and they brought with them these wildly different regional dialects from all over the British Isles. It was a massive linguistic mix. But as all these people lived and worked together in the 13 colonies, this fascinating phenomenon happened called dialect leveling. Basically, by the mid-18th century, all those diverse British dialects had mashed together and settled into a remarkably uniform-based dialect. And get this, it was actually way more uniform than the speech back in Britain at the time. It really wasn't until the 19th century that new waves of European immigrants started adding those minor regional flavors that we might recognize today. Moving right along to Section 2, the sounds. Believe it or not, spoken American English is actually kind of conservative in a few really surprising ways when you compare it to British English. See, while modern standard British English evolved over the centuries to drop the R sound in a lot of words, so they'd say car instead of car, American English largely held on to that older 17th century British habit of pronouncing every single R. Oh, and remember our little metal and metal test from earlier? Yep, that's the T&D flopping we were talking about. It's an absolute hallmark of the American consonant system, right alongside dropping the Y sound in words like new. So the crucial takeaway here is this concept of rhoticity. American rhoticity is, for all intents and purposes, a linguistic time capsule from the colonial era. When you pronounce the R in words like hard or work, you're actually preserving a phonetic feature that upper-class British speakers eventually abandoned. Why? Well, because dropping the R became this highly prestigious, trendy thing to do in London during the late 18th century. Okay, Section 3, Vocabulary and Grammar. As British colonists settled into this new world, they bumped into flora, fauna, and landscapes they'd literally never seen before. So what did they do? They borrowed names directly from Native American languages, giving us words we use all the time today, like moose, squash, and raccoon. Then, as the country expanded westward, Spanish loanwords like rodeo and cilantro became totally mainstream. And later on, 19th and 20th century European immigrants added even more to the mix, handing us everyday staples like cookie from Dutch and glitch from Yiddish. American English is honestly like a giant sponge, just constantly soaking up its environment. But it wasn't just about borrowing words from other languages. Distinct industries and entirely new ways of living led to completely different everyday vocabularies on opposite sides of the Atlantic. For instance, the boom of the automobile in America gave us the parking lot, while the British went with car park. Different housing trends meant Americans were living in a trailer instead of a caravan. So this divergence was really about inventing brand new compound words for a society that was modernizing at lightning speed. And we absolutely can't forget about grammar and spelling. We largely have Noah Webster to thank for this. When he published his incredibly famous dictionary back in 1828, he officially codified these simpler, more logical spelling rules that physically changed the way Americans write. He just dropped the U right out of flavor, and he swapped the RE for in words like fiber and center. It was a very deliberate move towards simplicity, effectively separating American written English from the more francophile tastes of Victorian Britain. Which brings us to Section 4, regional flavors. Language is always in motion, and some accents are actually diverging and changing really rapidly right now. Linguists are tracking vigorous new sound changes, like the inland north shift around the Great Lakes, where vowels are literally shifting forward in the speaker's mouth. Then, of course, we have the iconic Southern drawl, turning short front vowels into longer, gliding sounds. And if you head to the northeastern corridor, passing through New York and Philly, you get that tense, heavy aw sound. You know the one famously stereotyped by spelling coffee as C-A-W-F-E-E.
Okay, time for another quick test. Say the word caught, like a small folding bed, and then say caught, like catching a baseball. Do you pronounce them the exact same way? If you do, you've got what's called the caught-caught merger. This specific vowel merger is currently sweeping across the West and pushing deep into other parts of the country. It's actually acting as a massive geographical dividing line for American speakers right now.
And hey, it isn't just about vowels, it's about vocabulary too. There's this really famous study by linguist Bert Vox that found everyday word choices are so hyper-regional, they act almost like a linguistic fingerprint. Do you drink soda, pop, or Coke? Do you wear sneakers or tennis shoes? Are you eating a sub or a hoagie? Depending on how you answer those simple questions, a linguist can very often pinpoint exactly what region of the United States you grew up in. Crazy, right?
Finally, let's look at Section 5, Modern Status.
247.7 million. That is the staggering number of Americans aged 5 and above who spoke English at home as of 2024. To put that into perspective, that represents a massive 77% of the total U.S. population. It is the undisputed common language of government, education, and commerce across the states. But its legal status actually has a pretty interesting history. Historically speaking, the U.S. had no official language at the federal level at all. It was just left entirely up to the individual states. Get this, in 1923, Illinois actually briefly made American its official language. Over the decades, we saw a patchwork of state laws evolve, with 32 states adopting English-only legislation by 2024. Then, tracking the timeline to 2025, Executive Order 14224, issued under Donald Trump, officially designated English as the official language of the United States at the federal level. But of course, the reach of American English extends way, way beyond its domestic borders. Since the late 20th century, it has undeniably become the most influential form of English on the globe. American English drives global culture through cinema and music, it effectively standardizes international business, and it provides the core base vocabulary for modern technology and the entire internet. And that brings us to the end of our anatomical breakdown, which leaves us with a really provocative question. We've seen firsthand how American English is a living, breathing organism. It mixed in the colonies, it absorbed foreign words, it completely overhauled its spelling, and its vowels are literally still shifting as we speak. So, as some regional accents fade away while others rapidly merge, what is American English going to sound like in another 100 years? It's evolving every single day, and you are participating in that evolution every single time you open your mouth to speak. Thank you so much for exploring with us on this explainer. Keep listening and keep wondering.